Hey everyone, welcome back to the Belonging Experiment. And I'm Roby, and as always, I'm here with Anu. We're two friends who've moved around the world trying to find our sense of belonging wherever we land.
We started this podcast to share our stories, the good ones and the bad, so that you don't feel so lonely and you have a companion on your journey. Today, we are going to dive into something a little close to home, and I'm sure a lot of you watching this can relate: making friends as an adult.
Yes, for anyone who is tuning in for the first time here, we have both moved in different countries from Japan. I'm originally from the Philippines and just I'm navigating the new challenges of my new home here in the US.
And I'm Anu, and I moved from India to Japan to Portugal. We've had our fair share of challenges in adapting and finding our own place. And our biggest challenge that Roby and I recently talked about is making meaningful friendships as an adult.
And we'll discuss that different angles of friendship. But before we dive into our topic, we usually start our podcast with something light and just getting in touch. And I wanted to ask Anu, what's one thing that's very interesting that happened to you in the past week?
I signed up for an Airbnb walking tour experience. So I got some insights into Portuguese history. Interestingly, this was not done by a local, but somebody who is also a European, but they fell in love with Portugal. She's been living here for about 5 years now. So the reason I liked it so much is because she's not a local. She did not gloss through the ugly bits. She was very candid about the Portuguese history. And that was actually very nice to hear because at the end of the day, good or bad, it is all your choices that have made you who you are today. I think also in the process, I learned so much about the social nuances here, and how the natural calamities have played a major role in shaping Portugal for what it is today. So even I was like a tourist, but more like a local. So the perspectives we were able to share with each other was very nice, and I really appreciate that. I'll take you on the tour when you are here.
Yes, that's right. It's funny that you mentioned that because I feel that sometimes it's the best storyteller of the history is not exactly the locals sometimes.
I think
I
so
feel that's
too.
true. Like even for me, I don't know if I know much of the little details when I tour everyone when back in the Philippines, like I know the overview, but I feel like there's, especially if you're coming in new to a certain country, you have a lot of interest in knowing the history, and sometimes they end up knowing more. So I guess the point there is whether you are a local or not, if you're very interested to learn the history of a certain country, you can be the best storyteller, right? Yeah, so in the past week, for me, I even it just happened so fast. It was actually my birthday last week. So,
I
woohoo!
know. Belated happy birthday.
Yes. So I think that's my first birthday here in the US, and I think we spent it in a very nice way. We started in the farm. So there was a farm and you can hug some baby goats, lambs, and a chick. So yeah, it was very fun. And if I told my younger self that, hey, in the future you'll pay to go into a farm to hug all these farm animals, I would not believe myself because we
So
had
true.
those when I was young.
Right?
Yeah, so I think that's something that was very interesting, and it's just nice to do it. Yeah, and support the local businesses too. Yeah.
I think that's really nice. Like you said, for me also growing up, we would see them everywhere and they were just, part of either the household because we also had like my grandparents had a small farm. So they were always there. So wasn't really something that I would pay money for. But I guess that's the future of things in general, no? What
Yeah.
is normal becomes very antiquated as we grow older.
becomes a luxury.
Exactly. Anyway, let's launch into our podcast. The first segment today is friendship in various life stages. I think as children, Roby, I'm sure you've had it as you will understand what I mean. We were so much more uninhibited as children when we made friends, and because we used to be, whether it was in the playgrounds, in the classrooms, in school, or your neighborhood, you you made friends easily, like no biases. We didn't really think too much about it. But as we grow older, there are so many biases that fall into place, and it makes making friends a little bit more restrictive. So,
Right.
my question then brings me to how do you make friends today, and what do you think is the role of this very structured work environment that we have in making friendships?
Yeah. I would totally agree with you that I think we have different set of friends through different life stages. And even my friends back in high school, I still get in touch with them. I have another set of friends in college, another set of friends when I was in Japan. And I noticed that I have different topics that I approach, certain set of friends. So obviously for me, the role of my college friends is, I think they are my constants. So we've gone through life together. We still get in touch. We are the app group. So it's just there. We're always in touch. We seldom call each other, but we're always updated with each other's lives. And again, I guess in Japan, we got new set of friends. So they're more, let's say, our newer set of friends when it comes to tenure. But then I would say that they are the ones that I am most in touch with at the moment. I don't know if it's because they're the most recent group, but I think they have the most relevant, I think, experience that we could talk to moving around, like especially for both of us, for instance, where we moved to another country. So that shared experience, I think, is very important when you're going through different stages in your lives. And I think that shared experience becomes the bond to have your new set of friends. How is it with you? Do you still have different set of friends from maybe from your younger days to today?
I do value my longest friendships the most because I think the perspective that I get from different friends groups are very different. So with my oldest friends group, they always remind me how far I've come. I'm usually complaining to my friends about like how I did something really stupid. And when I talk to friends that I made in my 30s, their perspective is very different. They remind me about the situation that we're in, and they remind me about how they would have reacted in a similar scenario. We would like say at the end of the day, we all have different ways of doing things, so don't blame yourself, it's the situation. And that I really respect. And if I think about all of my friends and how I made friends in the last few years, some of my closest friends in Japan were typically people at work, like you and me, some of our other
Yeah.
friends. And until the day I left Japan, the people that I met towards the end were usually my work colleagues, either from our
Correct.
old
Yeah.
team or from my previous team. And you're right, the conversations I have with them, I think I'm fundamentally the same person with them, with all of them.
Right. Right.
But the conversation that we have with each other is different. Like you mentioned, I think the frequency is different. I keep in touch very differently. I don't know how you do it, but for me, I probably my greatest criticism about maintaining friendships, these older friendships, is that I don't get in touch very often, but when I do, we pick up right away from where we left
Right.
off. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
so I enjoy that. Like, I don't need to make an effort to now like reach out and be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
let's have a video
And
call. It's okay if we don't.
yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what happens when we have life transitions. And the natural thing that happens also is maintaining friendships become harder, right? And I also noticed, like with my work friends, when we are still together in the same environment, of course, we
Mm.
have a lot of topics. We become the moral support of each other when we are going through difficult bosses, for instance, or difficult people that we need to navigate to inside of the company. But when someone resigns, when someone is out of that company, I feel like suddenly there is a different shift that happens. And either you lose the friendship or you really put an effort to continue the friendship. I think that's my experience. So all of a sudden we didn't have stuff to talk about because we used to talk about work so much. But then I think I've had some of those set of friends that I feel like we graduated from the work friends and we just, yeah, we lost touch. But then I think I maintained very, very good friends where we continued to evolve. Of course, our topic evolved. We would still talk about each other's work, but it's a different kind of connection now. So, how was it for you when you kind of like made your own transition, let's say to either to a new work or to a new country? Did you feel like maintaining friendships were harder?
So you and me and the old team, we ensured
Right.
that we were still in touch. We used to get in touch with
Yes, yes.
each other. We used to catch up for drinks, and it was always amazing because we would travel back in time essentially, and then we would talk about all the good things, all the bad things, all the beef would resurface, and we would get so caught up. I think where we were working before, there was a lot happening, so I guess that was for me personally. I missed all of that. But now that I think about my last workplace when I left to move to Portugal, I think we're still generally in touch quite often. There's one thing that we've done. So we make sure that we get into a monthly. We have a monthly video call,
What?
some of us from my last workplace, where we just catch up. We talk about things, we complain about things together. I mean, at the end of the day, there's not much we can fix, but it's good to get things
Right.
out.
Correct.
And
Yes, yes.
somebody gives you then a good perspective to say, did you think about it from this perspective, or do you think, and the regular conversations, and then it's good.
Yeah. Yes, now that we have moved to a different country, and of course, we are still finding our way connecting with, people in our new
Mm.
home. One thing that I've really noticed is that when we're trying to settle into a new place, sometimes it's hard to have this connection because there are already existing social circles. So this is something that's recent that happened to me at work because most of my colleagues in my immediate department, they've been working there for at least 15 years. They have that level of trust that exists
Mm.
already. They could joke around they know the history. They could go into, let's say, difficult conversations at work and still they're confident that hey, we're good. There's just nothing personal. And and sometimes I feel like I'm the one. Obviously, I'm the outsider, right? And I'm just trying to make that connection. So sometimes I get disappointed with that because I can't. I want to have friends. I have to want. I want to have work friends. Please include me in your circle. And it's not like they're not trying to. They're trying to exclude me. But I think it's just natural for you to feel that way because you're the new one who's entering. So I think the
How did
discussion that
you
I
how did
wanted to
you
have with
overcome
you
how did you
is,
overcome that?
yeah, yeah. So I think it's just really spending time with them. So I went to a conference last week with them and just having that time to learn more about each other, but also not forcing it. Okay. So I've been here now for the last 6 months, but still I feel like I don't know a lot about their personal lives. But finally we get to share in the right environment at the right time. It just flows. So we got to share a little bit of my personal story, their personal story. And after that, you just feel like, okay, we're going somewhere with this. So I think let's be patient. I think that's my first learning. Don't force it. Friendships cannot be forced. It needs to have that natural growth in the conversation and the level of trust. Have you experienced that recently in your new place?
I was thinking about it. I think one thing that I was grateful about in Japan is I started work almost immediately, which means that a lot of my friends were typically work colleagues. And this is something very common in Japan, right? Like it's
Correct.
your
Yes.
work colleagues are your friends, and that's you develop through a certain trauma bond in the workplace,
Yes.
and the greater the trauma, the stronger the bond. So I think that was something that I was really grateful for. I was talking to this friend of mine recently. I'm like, the first time I met you, she wasn't around and everybody was talking so much about her. And I thought she was some sort of a celebrity in the office. She sounded like one. And when I met her, I was like, dude, what are you? Like, you're like so well put together and everything. But it took me almost 2 years ish to be really friendly with her, to like hang out often. Because in India, everybody will just call you for every get together. They'll be like, oh, like, I'm going for a party. If you want to come, you can come. So I was so used to that very open culture. And here, I
Right.
just felt very restricted. I didn't feel like I can just go and intrude somebody's get together, or I would
Yes.
even go
Yes.
to some get-togethers even though I was uncomfortable and I didn't like it, which then made me a very unapproachable person at the end of the day. Or I would be very clingy with like one person because I didn't like where I was. It took me a while, but I think this friend of mine, he mentioned that he was going to a party one day and he said, I have to go somewhere, but I'm not going to go today. I'm just heading home. I was like, shouldn't you? Is that okay? Isn't that like rude? He's like, why is it rude? I'm like, no, but they're like a really nice bunch of people. Do you not have like a companion to go with? Like I can keep you company. I know a lot of them. And he was like, no, I don't want to go. Like if you want to go, you go. I don't want to go. And I'm like, I don't get it. Did you just say no? Because
Yeah, is
for
that
me,
possible?
because for me, I had anxiety on both sides. Like saying no was an anxiety for me, but also accepting to go was. I would go there and I'd be very anxious. I'm terrible at small talk. Like these kind of conversations, I can talk for hours, but small talk, God, I just can't do small talk
Yeah,
because
that
I will speak
so
like two
awkward.
sentences and I can't make, I don't know, like open questions. There are some certain open questions. And then there's this, isn't this question a little too personal? Like what if this person thinks I'm prying? Am I being creepy right now? So I stopped myself. So for me was, it takes a while. Like today, me and her, when this friend of mine that I was giving you an example about from earlier, me and her, we have no filters when we speak, but that took a while for me to
Yeah.
build.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, connected to the earlier point that we were saying that you just, with friends, you have to be patient because it requires time to build that trust, right? But sometimes, it's not for all. I think I've had friendships too where in an instant we're just like, oh, we are vibing. And true enough, like you just open up and it's easy. So I guess it's really different for different people. And add the layer of the culture there, because I
I
think
was,
that's also a big part of it. And this will be interesting. I think we could move to this topic of the cultural aspect of friendships. And what's your read on this? Have you
it
experienced
was
it firsthand that you're having a difficulty because of cultural aspects?
so just to give the listeners some context, you and I worked in a company which was based in Japan, but there were a lot of non-Japanese people,
Correct.
especially a
Yes.
lot of people from Europe
From
also
Europe. Yeah.
working in the company. So the communication styles were widely different. If I had
Yes.
to talk to a Japanese person the way I talked to a European person, the Japanese person would most likely never want to see me after that because they would think I was too direct. So there's this whole thing about high context, low context communication, which, although we know this in theory, we were seeing it in practice. And I don't know how it was for you, but I think your department was very different from mine when I
Right.
started.
Right. Right. Right.
I think the department that I was in was more, had a lot of locals. And the locals, also because of the nature of our work, we were a little bit on the defensive side of things, which made life a little difficult for us because there was always this thing. So one of these colleagues, my Japanese colleagues, asked me, she came up to me and she said, "Hey, you went for this so and so person's party last night, right?" Referring to a European person. I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "So what do you foreigners talk about? Are you complaining about Japan all the time? Like, what are you talking?" And I didn't know how to answer the question because I was like, should I be honest with her or should I like gloss it over? Was It was so hard to navigate. I mean, today I have
Yeah.
some solid friendships with Japanese people and with European ex-colleagues, but it didn't happen for
Yeah.
me. For me, it didn't happen
Yeah.
easily. You
Yeah.
were in a different department,
Yeah.
which is a little bit more international. How was it for you?
Yes. So I also had the same experience with you. I think back in the Philippines, I would say it's even really effortless to make friends, or at least the first stage of friends, right? Because you would just talk to each other. I think the language is there too, because you talk in your local language. It's just easier to make jokes. There's nuances to the language that you could just easily, crack a joke and you could connect with other person. So I think that's one part of it. I think another part of it is I think we also grew older and our priorities changed and the topics that we talked to changed. So when I moved to Japan, that was something that I really had to adjust because even at work, back in the Philippines, you can make very solid friendships at the workplace. But the first time in Japan, it really took a while before I could find my own tribe. And even when I was in a very international group, because the context is we are in Japan, we have boundaries that we need to respect. It was just quite difficult for me to navigate. So, just to give you a quick example, like back in the Philippines during meetings, we would have snacks and food in the middle, just nuts and some drinks, that you could just munch on while you're talking to each other, and it's completely fine, right? But in Japan, oh, that's not possible. You cannot even eat. I mean, you can bring maybe coffee, but then there's a proper time when to eat, but that's not something you do during the meeting. So little things like that just makes the whole environment a little more formal, and you could really feel the boundary. And I think that really naturally just makes it harder for us to connect and navigate the friendships in Japan.
And for me, I think it's important that I'm asking this question because for me, it's important that when you're in a new country, it's important to make friends with locals for you to have the best experience and for you to really have solid takeaways about your life there. So, what did you have to do or to overcome to ensure that you were able to get the respect that you needed to be successful at your workplace from your colleagues, as well as to make meaningful friendships with the locals?
Yes. I think what happened eventually is I also made an effort. I looked at, friendships also similar to relationships where you really need to put in that effort so that you both have a chance to get to know each other. So I think I started hanging out with them on a personal level. So if they would invite me in let's say, a home party where normally I'd be very anxious to join. And then, like I just tried to, okay, you'll be fine. Just go there. So I think it also helps to just first just target to have one close friend, and then after that, you have strength in numbers because now you go together, and then you join the other, let's say, social circles, and you won't feel so alone. So I think that helped me a lot to find one person that I'm really comfortable with, and then we kind of like evolved and have new connections and just getting to know each other. I think that really helped me a lot. And is there something that you learned from this whole experience of cultural differences? Is there something else that you did that also helped you?
I just realized this. So, when I started working, My boss was a European and he was very particular about efficiency and work-life balance and, need to wrap up work by 5. And he was like, I don't believe people work beyond 5 o'clock because, you're just trying to show now that you're being busy. And that, which I didn't realize that time, was very disrespectful to Japanese culture. So, which is, I mean, I overcame that without realizing, of course, because I was also studying Japanese at that time, and I started slowly understanding how language works and how people communicate with each other. And because I started showing interest in Japanese language and culture, and I would go up to my colleagues and be like, why is it like this? Why is it like that? And those kind of the cultural appreciation part really helped people look at me a little differently, to say, oh, this person probably, really cares. The second thing, I think one big mistake that I did was, and I don't think it was mine, to be honest, I think it was the policy at that time. We came in at that time on a 2-year stint. So in Japan,
Right.
everything is long term. So the moment they knew we were temporary,
Right.
they didn't take us seriously at all, right? So they were like, you're going to
Right.
leave in 2 years anyway, so how does it matter? So the moment, I mean, 2 years later, the moment it seemed a little bit more long term, people were willing to give me a chance, I guess. But then over a period of time, I think they really had to see me work long hours, to see me give it my everything and then a little bit more, to understand that I really knew what I was talking about. If I didn't know, I would make an effort to learn it. These were the things that then really opened up the friend circle for Japanese colleagues at that time. So, just to give you an example, there was this colleague who came up to me, and she usually would never talk to me. She would just be like, she would just nod and walk away, even though we hung out quite often. So, one day she came up and he's like, hey, here's a chocolate for you. And I'm like, huh? And I'm like, why? I'm like, thanks, but why? And then she was like, no, I know the last week has been really hard for you. I saw you, I was the last one to leave the office, but you were still there. And then I've been seeing you coming at like 7 a.m.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh, you noticed? And she was like, of course I noticed, because you had to turn off the lights, not me. And that's when I realized, the moment they see that you share the same passion of work that they have, was when they start appreciating you. So I'm hoping that that's something that I can use in Portugal, understand the culture better, understand the people better, make an effort to learn about all the different types of wines possible, I think really make an effort in terms of liking the food, like
Right.
understanding the
Yeah.
culture, learning the language. For me, this was my
Right.
biggest takeaway.
Yeah. No, and there was a conference about customer experience that I joined a month ago. And there was one interesting fact that I wanted to share, that for the first time, we have 7 generations who communicate differently from your, I don't know if it's really the boomer who is now the oldest, but then we also have the alpha and the beta now. So that's amazing to look at, right? Because if you look at each of those the generation too, they really communicate differently. They have certain ways of connecting to each other. So I think that also adds a level of complexity when we are moving to a new country or moving to a new workplace, because you'll meet different kinds of people there from different generations too. And aside from the cultural aspect, you have the generation aspect. You also have your personal, let's say, life stage aspect. Because, truth be told, right, some of our friends are now parents, and they have new set of friends too, and they have different priorities. We still have friends who are single, and they also have a different lifestyle. So that really just adds to the complexity. So knowing that, right, I think we want to wrap this up by talking about tips on making friendships or maintaining adult friendships. And I would say we are not yet there. Okay. We're still a work in progress too. But maybe we could share a few tips that we've learned so far that has worked for us. And if you guys also have some tips, that would also be helpful for us. So come on, share it later on. But for me, I think the first thing that I'd like to share is to put an effort. I think friendships always require effort. Either you're maintaining one or making new set of friendships. So
Mm.
I think it's for me, for instance, recently I've joined some classes, hoping that maybe, you'll find some special connections in there. And I think it's also understanding that if you don't, then that's also fine, right? Don't put any standards to it that, oh, I really need to have friends right now. Maybe it takes time and that's fine. And to be comfortable with that for a while until you really make meaningful connections. Do you have something in mind right now, Anu, that you would like to
For,
share too?
for me, I was thinking understand the culture and learn to appreciate the culture. I think there are there are a lot of things that you may not appreciate in the new culture that you're in, but trying to see the other person's perspective, I think, is really important. And here's the thing, I think somebody can say, I choose not to be this way, I choose not to make an effort to understand. And that's completely up to you. But this is, we're saying, if you want to live in a place long term, really have strong
Right,
takeaways about, who you are as a person. Forget about everything else. For you
right,
and me,
right.
Robi, this is the same thing, right? You and I are very different people from where we were a few years ago. And I think if that kind of change has to happen, there needs to be some sort of understanding and an effort to appreciate the culture, not to not make the mistake that I make to say, oh my God, like working late is so inefficient. Don't do that. I was parroting my
Right,
boss,
right,
but it was
right.
still a bad idea. Please don't do that if you're in a culture that appreciates long hours of work. I think those are the two things
Yeah,
me, but there should be more. No? We talked so much about
yeah,
this. Let me see what else we.
yes. Yeah, I just wanted to touch a little bit about culture shock and the reverse culture shock and how that affects us as a people. So, with the different cultures that we've been exposed to, of course, in my case, I'm originally from the Philippines, and then we lived for a long time in Japan, and we have adapted to, let's say, the local culture or the the ways that they have communicated, respecting boundaries, for instance, always thinking about the other person, not inviting yourself to a party because that's rude, but rather really respecting, is this fine to do? Am I crossing the boundary? Being very mindful to a fault to a certain extent, because I carried that here. And now the culture that I'm in is very open. They want to communicate, they want to get in touch with you. And now I'm the person who's a little bit, wait, I'm not ready to communicate. I'm not ready to share that. Or, you wouldn't believe it. I have social anxiety now, like being with big groups. And that has not happened with me before. So I think those exposures that we have with different cultures have also made it a little bit difficult for us to open up. And I think being aware of those and trying to rewire your brain is also going to be very important, right? And you can't just say, well, I'm like this and I don't want to adjust. Well, that's fine if that's what you choose to do. But if you want to connect with other people, then I think you also need to make that adjustment. And being aware of yourself is a very important key there.
And I think the fifth point, which I wanted to share in our summary, is to take your time. Because at the end of the day, nothing happens overnight. Rome wasn't built in
For
a day.
sure.
It takes time for two people. One is for you yourself to understand how you are feeling through the process, whether you're comfortable or no. I've always noticed that when you are in your safe space, the way you interact and the person that you are is very, very different from the person that you are in an environment where you feel uncomfortable, pushed in a corner. So that is something that was my biggest takeaway for me because I realized that every time I felt anxious, somebody else was as well. And either
Right.
we didn't understand
Yes.
each other very well or we got along really well with each other because we had the same feeling. Yeah, take your time and ensure that you're comfortable
Yes.
at first more than anything else.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah, and and be comfortable being alone too. I think it's never, you know, wrong to take your time and date yourself, explore the new country that you are in, because that gives you some time to be comfortable in the new culture that you're in. So connected to what Ando was saying. Well, I guess we have come to the end of our podcast. We could talk hours about our stories and adult friendships. I'm sure there's a little more angles that we have not really talked in this podcast today. We could probably do another podcast part two about adult friendships. Let us know what kind of topics you guys are interested to talk about, your experiences as well. Any tips that you want to share to us as well, that would be highly appreciated. But really, just thank you. This is our fourth episode. You guys are a rock star in supporting us and just sharing your own experiences as well. So if you have not yet, and this is the first time you've stumbled upon our podcast, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment so that we know where you guys are coming from. In the next episode, I think we were discussing what to dive into next year, and I think we found the next topic for you guys.
Yeah.
Would you like to share that, Andrew?
Yeah, so for the next topic, since it's already been almost 5 months for me here and for you a little around a year, Roby, the next topic that we wanted to talk about is personal growth and reflections, things that we wish we knew before moving abroad, and
Oh, yes.
just trying to figure out what else do we need at this point to feel 100% at home. We look forward to having you all in the next episode. And like Ruby mentioned, please let us know if there's anything else that you would like to hear us talk about. Thank you so much for being here. If you've stayed here until this point, really, thank you so much. Very appreciated.
Well, thank you, everyone, and see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.